Hello guys, hello and welcome to ScandiPWA Meetup. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about ScandiPWA design patterns, and what we will learn today will likely be implemented in future ScandiPWA versions and is already implemented in some of the experiments that ScandiPWA team has been doing during this time. And you can also see I have upgraded my look. Now I have these beautiful glasses. How you like that? Let me know in the comments, and see you in the section to discuss how I look. So let's move forward. I have not really got a good name for this presentation because, well, design patterns sound boring, but we can also tell what's coming, or we can even take mistakes recapped, because we will talk about old approaches and new approaches, and we'll try to see how do they compare. So let's begin with containers. So what's up with containers in ScandiPWA? Currently, we are doing them like this. We can see that we are extending pure components and we add a namespace to them. That's normal. But what we also do, and what's could be noted, is that we see that we have a rendering method, and in this rendering method we are specifically hard coding a component that this container is rendering. This means in order to override the component or to reuse the container, we have to basically override or extend the original container and extend or override the rendering method, which is not ideal. And we can also see that the boilerplate for definition of container props and container functions still persists. What we don't see is what I will tell a bit later, but for now, let's move to how new containers look. So take a look at the new ones. They have this export class pagination container, which extends high order component. We can see that we're using a different base. Instead of pure component, we're now using higher order component. This is still a custom class that we created, but it contains quite a lot of functionality that's interesting, and we'll talk a bit later about it. And we can see that to use it, we actually call another high order component, which we pass inside the container. And you can see it highlighted in yellow. And the second argument is actually the component that we are wrapping. This means that we can actually call the container and component separately. And this means that we can extend each of them and test each of them separately without actually needing one of them. I hope this makes sense. This actually removes the hard coding part. And yeah, please don't pay attention to this with context thingy. That's another part which we might talk a little bit later about. This is another pattern that ScandiPWA uses or will use in the future. Okay, so why is this cool? Why do I think it's cool? Because first of all, I'm no longer hard coding components. Second of all, I'm no longer writing boilerplate about rendering methods and container props and container functions. And what I told was hidden, but still very important, is that actually now container props and container functions are optimized in order to cache properly, because previously on each call, the container functions were recreated and they returned a new object, container props, and they returned a new object, and this new object contained the different values that led to some issues. So now, in order to mitigate those issues, we are finally doing some calculations in order to ensure that the objects are up to date, thus improving the rendering performance and doing less renders without need. Okay, so what's about the data structures? Well, how were they? Did they look somewhat different in ScandiPWA? Yes, we can see that previously in ScandiPWA, we used arrays and maps in order to display the to contain some data and to later extend them, because, well, we understood that using some object like an array or a map basically is very useful for data extension. And on my tutorials in ScandiPWA, I usually talked about the way of thinking about what data you will have and then creating such mapping in your component in order to eliminate all of those switches and all of those nasty ifs in your code, so your code is beautiful and extensible. Because remember, arrays are easy to extend, maps are easy to add new keys to, thus they're also easy to extend well. This way worked, but notice that basically there was a mix of them and they weren't consistent, so you never knew how would you extend this exact component's property. And now you know, because, well, we have created a new data structure just for our needs, and those are actually the sorted render maps or sorted maps. In this case, I'm using the sorted render map as it also provides a rendering method, but by default, we have a new data structure, which is render map, which works both as an array and as a map. This means that you can push elements into it by still provide a key, but you can push on specific position, and then when rendering automatically, they will be ordered in the position you requested. But if you, for example, want to override this behavior, you can of course call them by key that you also provided. Thus, it creates, yeah, I cannot sneeze. No, I have this funny feeling in my nose, but I'll try to continue. Well, so yes. So again, we have the sorted render map, and it works both as an array and as a map. So what benefits does it bring to us? First of all, that's a clear extension point. We no longer need to think about how should we extend the thing, and maybe in some time in the future the API will change from array to a map, and then we kind of have to rewrite our code. Not anymore. Now we have a structure that works both as an array and as a map. And that allows us to stay flexible, because now in blank themes we can render a sorted array, and in our custom themes we can call each item in the map by the key. Thus, like for example, here we have the actions in the product card, and then we push, for example, a title in the product actions. This is like not the real example case, but again, we have some rendering map. We push an item to it, then we render by this key, or we render the whole map together, which is very useful for blank theme rendering. Okay, so blank theme, some new buzzword that I'm using and I'm referring to. What does that mean? Well, blank theme means that we are completely eliminating all HTML and styling elements in our core modules. Yeah, why do we need it? Well, because take a look at our old example. What we can see here is a nested JSX, which is pretty hard to extend and pretty hard to write in your own way. We put too much preference into it. You can see we're using some blocks and element syntax, which is a bit confusing and requires some time to get used to. Thus, we no longer want to limit you by this, so we're creating this option to not use the HTML elements at all. And also, we don't provide styling, so you as a theme creator can choose which way you want to go, and we will develop a different approaches to theming. For example, we'll have themes that are utilizing CSS and JS. We will have themes that are utilizing Sass, and you would be able to choose your technology. And maybe even further thinking, it might be possible that not just the different HTML or whatever, but even the whole UI modules will be switchable. But we'll talk about this just a bit later, maybe even briefly mention it because, well, we have time frame here. Okay, so why is that cool? I mean, why is building blank themes cool, and why it brings some benefit to us? Because first of all, we'll have a broader theme variety. This means that now we will start building more themes. This will allow you as our users to basically choose wisely. I mean, you will have much more options, and they will be suited to different categories, like more fashion-oriented, more utility-oriented, like you sell parts, you sell some stuff that doesn't require fitting, and I mean, like color fitting and different things. So yeah, you will see that more B2B-oriented designs. You will see that coming this year. And what we also have is basically the introduction of blank themes will decrease bundles even more. Despite us being the tiniest bundle amongst our competitors or other players in this field, we still know the way how to decrease that even further, and we can do it by introducing blank themes, because now we won't have the overrides containing the classes and logic from the previous component, which is overridden. Yeah, we will have much less logic there because, well, it's blank theme and it has no styling. So it's a little bit more efficient in that regard, as well as the API of frontend will be more stable and will allow for easier migration in the future, because you don't want to change much in a blank theme, as it's pure functionality and no templates there. Okay, so we're moving from context to context from Redux. So we're using native React feature. How does that look? Well, it looks like this. Previously, we had this huge maps to state and maps to props, or to dispatch to props. Yeah, it's pretty confusing and pretty complex, and it gets out of hand quickly. So instead of doing all this, we decided to move from it to much simpler option, which looks just like this. You see, we just specify a context type, and we then take the element from this context. This means now we can have multiple product cards, each declaring a product context, and inside of them you will be able to move elements freely, because again, context is available for each children, no matter the depth. Thus, you can create whatever layout and move elements around, and you don't need to think about props passing, which was a big problem in ScandiPWA version 1, or version previous to that. What else? Why is that cool? Just to recap, again, flexible styling. There is more ways for you to juggle the elements inside, because you are no longer constrained by passing in the specific props. And also, you will find that the business logic is hidden inside of the context. Thus, it's much easier to handle your frontend, because all you do is you import some already formatted data in your template and you render it. So we moved much more calculations, like, for example, understanding which configurable product is currently selected into the product context, because, well, that makes sense for a product to know or to keep the information about which configurable product is selected. So it's no longer calculated in every component, etc. So this architecture, or this approach, allows us to have much more granular information in terms of where we are taking our data from, not from a big monolithic storage, but rather from small tiny pieces that we piece together, ensuring that they are contained in the correct part. And a large final element I wanted to discuss is the modular approach here. So we can see it looking like this today. A big folder with a lot of files, mixing the category with checkout. Yes, we have this flat structure, but what it lacks is the separation into modules, into logical modules. But why we never did it? Well, because we never wanted to mix up functionality with its integration. But now, when we can separate them and keep them in separate modules due to introduction of Mosaic extension mechanism. Yeah, now we can much more granularly control it and achieve the following result. We can see that we have now packages which all contain different logic. Like, for example, we have a lending CMS and lending. Thus, we have also a CMS module, for example. And now from that, we can understand that we have the lending page, for example. Then we have a CMS rendering logic, and then we have an integration between CMS and lending. And this means we can always take a collection of modules and plug it away or plug it in, or even just upgrade separately, because they have also the separate dependencies. Yeah. So that's cool. And you can see that inside they are now much more organized. You can see that the packages that we're looking at contain only the components and the logic related to them. So that's cool and neat. Let's summarize. Well, we have a better ability to upgrade. We have an option to plug and play desired modules, like we can switch off CMS to some different one, because again, it's a module which is standalone. And yeah, we have the extensible architecture out of the box because we thought about it while implementing. Without that, it wouldn't be possible even to implement the application, because, well, your app is extensible from day zero because you are writing in modules and basically extending it. Okay, so number 5, CSS and JS. Number 6, well, there are quite many things that we want to change, but I wanted to highlight the most important ones. So you can ask me more questions about which patterns like could appear, which patterns might not appear during the Q&A session, and I will be very happy to answer your questions. Yep. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you would like to know more about how those patterns affect the project, or how do we build projects like this, you can see us building the shopware implementation of ScandiPWA live, and it's built using these patterns, and you can see them being implemented there. So it's a live stream with our thoughts, with my comments, with frustration, with everything you guys want to see. And that's basically a real life experience where we, in the terms of 1 week and few days, build a completely functioning, working blank theme for shopware as an experiment project, testing out all the architecture patterns that we wanted to implement. And yeah, testing out how Mosaic works in the field. Yeah, you can also subscribe to our GitHub and watch it. You can also visit the release section of ScandiPWA to follow weekly releases. They're not weekly anymore, but we still call them like this because, well, we try to make sure we have some deliverable by the end of each week. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'm sorry for this Telegram disruption. I have shared an amazing audio music to my friend, and he's now listening to it while I forgot to disable notifications. Thank you guys, and see you during the Q&A session.
Yeah, so this was a pre-recorded video, as you might know now.
Presumably, yes, but you're now on the stage. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yep. Hello, me.
And there are quite a lot of questions for you, actually. Let's kick off right off the bat. The first question is, will it require a lot of work to migrate custom modules from version 4 to version 5?
Well, it doesn't appear so, because basically, yeah, so we have to like separate here. Basically, there are like backend changes that might be needed, and there are front-end changes related specifically to ScandiPWA that again might be needed. And because version 5, which is coming next week, is a redesigned version, it might require some additional tweaking in order to make sure that the templates and the stuff you inject in is looking nice. Otherwise, there shouldn't be much issues. Maybe again, the performance, because the Redux was made asynchronous. So now we load Redux reducers on demand. This will come in version 5. So potentially, if you relied on Redux reducers, you might need to migrate to lazy importing the Redux reducers. Yep. So that's the answer. So again, the front end might require some work. The backend part didn't change much. It's the redesign in the end of the day.
All right. Let's carry on. How do we implement multi-store Magenta websites with ScandiPWA with single domain?
So as far as I remember, this feature is supported for years now. And what you can basically do is go ahead and enable it in Magento admin. So you need to enable the URL-based store routing. I might be, that's basically how it should work. If it doesn't work this way, well, you're free to open the GitHub issue and we'll take a look into it. But as far as I remember, there are like many stores that are working this way. And Scandi supports both URL-based and domain-based, so basically path name-based and domain-based stores. So yeah, that should be supported. Just maybe consult the user guide made by Liana.
So essentially, it should work, and if it does not, it's in an individual case that should be posted on GitHub for fix. It's a bug in that case.
Yeah, if anything doesn't work and you think that's an issue that might require a solution from our side, yes, you are very free to go ahead to GitHub and open a new issue, and the Liana will take a look and go through it and will help you to resolve it. So every issue is basically seen. We might not respond, but we see all of your issues and we put them in the roadmap, basically defining what we will take next and what we'll take after we handle those.
Yeah, well, that's clear then. The next one coming from Stefan is, in which version will this be included? It might change while updating to this new one.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the big thing is that the changes, so the approaches which I described in this presentation are the perfect approaches we currently see. So the best way to write ScandiPWA architecture. Yes, the architectural solutions that we endorse. And those are only possible because of basically Mosaic. So this is how you should work with Mosaic. And there are projects, not ScandiPWA already, who are still using Mosaic and the same architectural approaches, but building completely different apps all around, like the cryptocurrencies, car brands, etc. Like the list is now growing, so it's no longer just ScandiPWA who is using the plugins, extensions, and themes that we have developed under the Mosaic technology. So that's the first point. So what I described here is just a set of rules that we kind of ended up with after trying to build a better application. And we use them a lot in our experiment projects, like the Shopify ScandiPWA implementation and Shopware ScandiPWA implementation. Both of them were just Plunk themes because we basically tried our power, or basically tried if our tools are efficient enough to implement a complete store with this new approach. And turns out that yes, we indeed can build a completely modular applications. Now we just have to migrate the Magento implementation to this approach, but this might take more time because the Magento implementation is the most advanced. Again, we are covering 95% of all Magento features, which means that basically it's much more complex thing to migrate to all of this architectural solution. Basically, migrating to modules is very painful. The Mosaic was retrofitted in ScandiPWA. This means that ScandiPWA at this point is a monolith that is extensible by Mosaic. Other projects that start from scratch, they are extensible by design because they are based on Mosaic. So they have much less issues when migrating from one version to another version. Yeah. So that's a very long but whole definitive answer to the question.
Certainly, but does these in the further versions, do these changes mean that in the further versions of ScandiPWA that they will not be compatible with the current one?
Yes, absolutely, because like the approaches we took here, like for example, if I say let's go modular, well, it's impossible to go modular and yet stay compatible with previous versions because the API will change. Or an example, if I will tell you we'll migrate to a blank theme first, again, it will be very complex to pretty much, yeah, it will be just very complex to virtually very complex to like keep the same structure and extensibility. So yes, once these changes are implemented, it will require major migration. So this will be a change that never happened to ScandiPWA, basically complete redesign. But it's not as near as you might imagine. We have some other plans to do before we approach it, or even while we are doing it. So you won't be left without any updates or notices. The product is evolving, supported, and those are just ideas for the future because we have to think about the future as that's important to have a long-term plan. So this is a long-term plan, sneak peeks, basically.
And talking about long-term plans, what will be some new themes that ScandiPWA team is willing to build?
Yeah, so the teams are currently built by the awesome core team of ScandiPWA, and it's guided by Liana. And two of those largest ideas of themes are a modern design and the I would say how would you name it? So basically a design that is proven proven by time design and the modern design for fashion brands. So one could be easily used by the car manufacturers, you like anything household stuff, B2B, it could be used as a base for that. And the other one is more like ASOS-like, where you scroll around, or maybe inspired by Zara, something like this, where you have like a very cool, very stylish look that is nice to demo. Yeah.
Right, we have time for one last question from Stefan again. Alfreds, we are looking forward to start working on a huge project. What version of Scandi do you recommend to work with? And should we wait for a certain version, or is there an older one recommended?
No, I will not say that any specific version is better than the other. The latest stable version is better than all the others. You shouldn't wait for something new because all necessary features to build amazing applications are already present. So as you might know, like the Puma, Adidas, and all the other guys were built using ScandiPWA at the latest version that was available. So this only means that, again, most likely our tools and all approaches are already available. The solutions that we provide or I described in this presentation are likely just the quality of life improvements that, again, are awesome to have. but are not required to build awesome products. They're just things to address into the future, because we are seeing the problems that basically happen currently, but those are addressable, and not a big deal. You can live with them, and we lived with them. It's just a better way to do it. I hope this makes sense.
That was a really elaborate answer, and it was a really great presentation of yours. And I think we can thank you for the attendance and for your presentation and your time. It was really nice to have you on the stage. And we see you in the core team Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. See you there. Yep. So bye-bye.